Hello, friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle Fondin, and I'm the author of The Empowered Divine Feminine, Becoming an Unstoppable Woman in the 21st Century and Beyond. All of my published books are available on Amazon. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Today, we are talking about how the patriarchy will not go easily. And this is a spiritual discussion. It's not political, it's not religious, it's not societal, it's mostly spiritual. So stay tuned if you are interested in learning more about the patriarchy and why it won't go easily. I'm here with my friends. I've got a Gudetama over there. I still haven't been able to find Grogu. One of my cats must have taken it, and I do not know where they put it. I've really looked everywhere. It's got to be around here somewhere, though. I'm here with my Grogu tumbler, though, with my Ticino Dandelion Caramel Nut Tea. Still a little hot, but very, very good. So much is going on in the world, right? So much is happening in the world today. If circumstances, situations, and events are disturbing you, you are not alone. You are absolutely positively not alone. And if you are on the spiritual journey, you consider yourself to be a light worker, it's even more disturbing because of your heightened sensitivity to humanity. And my advice to you is, first and foremost, to unplug from anything that is disturbing you. Why? Because you can't change it just by watching disturbing images, listening to the news, listening to people talking about the news. It doesn't help because it's just about complaining or venting. It's really not going to bring about systemic change. And that brings me to the spiritual perspective of it. Let's talk a little bit about the patriarchy. And in my book, The Empowered Divine Feminine, I dedicate an entire section on this principle of yin and yang, on this principle of lower masculine and lower feminine, and then the principles of higher masculine or divine masculine and divine feminine, not having to do with a romantic connection, not having to do with the twin flame journey, having to do with energy and how energy is transforming at a very, very rapid pace. We are in a time where the planet Pluto, the planet of deep transformation, is currently in the sign of Aquarius, which is about the people at large, societies. And Pluto will remain in Aquarius, the sign of the people, for close to 30 years, and it has just begun. So we're not even close to having this all be finished. So what's happening on a spiritual level? And I spoke about this with the ancient Chinese principle of yin and yang. They are natural principles in nature, in you. And as women and men, as male and female, we have an innate sense of these balanced energies within us. Now, of course, we're talking about an energy. So there could be a woman figure who is in lower masculine or a male figure who is in lower feminine. But we're talking about this principle, this dynamic approach of yin and yang, like day and night, sun and moon, the winter and the summer. So these are dynamic principles in nature that automatically exist just by virtue of being part of natural things, material things. And so when we think about these energy dynamics, well, the patriarchy, which is definitely the lower masculine, if you were to measure it at an energetic level, it's definitely in the lower level masculine energy. It's not in that higher level masculine. In my book, I explained that as a result, the feminine has answered the patriarchy in a lower feminine energy. Now, some have tried, and certainly things are succeeding more now for the higher divine feminine to rise into prominence. But for the most part, as long as the patriarchy has been in power, in charge, predominant in societies, the lower feminine has responded to the lower masculine. That's just how things have been. However, now energies are changing and transforming at such a rapid pace. Why? Because more and more and more and more people are awakening to their higher spiritual selves and to higher spiritual truths. And so that is causing global energies to shift and change as more and more people awaken to their higher spiritual selves and as more and more people awaken to higher spiritual truths. Now, the divine feminine collective is one that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger because divine feminines are actually awakening to these truths much faster than the divine masculine. Why? Because the power that has been in control has been the lower masculine. And when you have control already, when you have ease of life already, there's not a lot of motivation to change, right? When things are easy, you don't want to change. When things are going your way, there's really no need to struggle. You don't want to change things. And so for the feminine collective, whether you're a man who is embodying more feminine energy or a woman embodying feminine energy as the natural source of who you are, because it's been a struggle to compete or fight or try to gain equal measure with the masculine energy, especially the lower masculine, the feminine collective has just had to fight harder and longer. And so because there has been this power struggle, divine feminines are rising in prominence faster because the struggle has been a lot longer. So since the dawn of humanity, really, there has been this ongoing struggle for the feminine principle, the yin principle, to gain some traction, to have more or less an equal standing with the masculine principle, the yang principle. And so that's why when we see people awakening faster and faster and faster, it's a lot more divine feminines rising into their higher spiritual selves faster, at a faster rate. I'm not saying that it's not happening for the masculine. It's just happening at a much, much, much faster rate for the divine feminine collective. And so they're letting go of the lower feminine. The lower feminine is feeling like I'm a victim and I have no power. And I must succumb to what the masculine in the collective says I must do to make the peace, to be compassionate, to be loving, to be kind, which are all great in and of themselves. However, when you feel like you're a victim, you are disempowered. Divine feminines are then rising into their own, realizing, oh, hey, I don't need to be a victim. I can have empowerment and have equality, and I can rise up, but in a peaceful way, to the lower masculine. And I can say, hey, we need to even the playing field out here. This no longer is acceptable. I'm not going to stand for it. But again, you're not going to do that through the struggle of the past, which is really fighting for your rights, which is a lot of yang energy. You're going to do it in a more yin way. Yin way is like standing high in your power, being anchored and rooted in your power, receiving the benefits of that divine feminine energy. So I started this video by saying the patriarchy will not go easily. And we are already seeing this on the world stage. It almost seems like the masculine is growing and growing and growing in power, But the lower masculine, not the higher masculine, the lower masculine, is growing in enormous power. The scene that comes to mind is from my favorite Disney animated feature film, Aladdin. So if you don't know the story of Aladdin, I'm going to tell it to you here. Aladdin is what they would consider to be a street rat. However, there is an oracle, which is disguised as a lion cave, who sees Aladdin as the diamond in the rough. Now, Jafar, the Sultan's vizier, or right-hand man, if you will, is very jealous, and he wants to rise to power as the Sultan. And he does all kinds of trickery in order to get the Sultan to turn power over to him. Jafar tricks Aladdin into getting this magic lamp with a genie and to grant him the wishes so that he can become an all-powerful sultan. But what ends up happening is Aladdin has the lamp and Aladdin makes the wishes, and he somehow tricks the princess, the sultan's daughter, into believing that he, Aladdin, is actually a prince. Toward the end of the movie, Jafar, the vizier, finally gets a hold of the lamp. Now, there is one thing that is interesting here. The genie is actually a servant. He's powerful because he can grant wishes, but he is tethered to the lamp and he is a servant to the master. Jafar, in his need for ultimate power, the greatest power he could possess, wishes that he was a genie without remembering the fact that the genie is imprisoned by the lamp and that the genie is the servant to a master. Jafar wishes that he were an all-powerful genie, and then he quickly realizes that he is imprisoned by the lamp. The same thing is happening with the patriarchy, with the lower masculine. It might seem, just like that final scene in the animated feature film Aladdin, that the patriarchy is gaining in ginormous power and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, when in fact, the bigger they try to gain in power with the lower masculine energies, the more they are imprisoning themselves, and they will then be confined to a lamp, if you will. So that is how this is going to play out. Why? Because the principle of yin and yang and the way nature is actually balanced is that when one principle, the yang principle in this case, is in predominance or dominance too long, the yin principle will rise up to balance it out, because everything on this earth plane has a balance and a balanced point. Now, the divine feminines, as they are awakening and rising into prominence, because they're operating under spiritual laws, the masculine is feeling the pressure. The lower masculine is feeling the pressure of losing power, of losing footing, of things crumbling to the ground. And they will try to grasp on to that power for as long as they possibly can, while trying to gain more and more power. So that is why on the exterior plane, it looks like things are very bad. So let's look at some models of the lower masculine that may try to overcome the feminine or even the higher masculine. For example, if you have a male doctor who is absolutely trying to convince you that you have a specific disease and that you need to get all these tests and go through all these things in order to get better, that doctor is using his power to overpower you into understanding how you can heal yourself, or an understanding that you might have better options or even other options. It might look disguised as a boss who is forcing you to work extra hours because you're a salaried employee and They know that there's a shortages of jobs, especially for the upcoming people graduating from college, and they could easily hire someone for a lot less money than you make. And so then they threaten you and they say, well, you have to work weekends. You have to work these extra hours because I need you here. And if you don't want me giving your job away, then you'll stay. And so that is the unadulterated power that they are trying to possess over you. It could come disguised, of course, as political figures, as we've seen. It could come as religious figures. It could come as a spouse, for example, that tries to overpower you in that lower masculine energy. So it can come disguised in a lot of different forms. But let me tell you this right now, that if you are operating in the higher feminine, the higher octave of the feminine, or the higher octave of the masculine, it won't affect you as much. If you're operating in the lower feminine or the lower masculine, it is going to affect you a lot. Now, I know you're thinking right now, like, how can this even be possible that it wouldn't affect me? Because there are many things going on today that are actually affecting me. Sure. But when you're operating from the greater spiritual laws, the universe has got your back. The universe, even though that things might not look good right now, eventually things will work out for you and they won't work out for someone acting in the lower masculine and even the lower feminine. But right now, it's that sense of the patriarchy that's crumbling and grasping for power. Think of this. If you are on the twin flame journey, or you've ever been in love with someone and that love was not reciprocated in equal measure, you know what it's like when that person withdraws love from you. You hold on to that person sometimes like a pit bull on a rubber tire. Meaning you're like, you're not letting me go. I'm going to chase after you. You said you love me and now you're leaving me. And so it's that same energy of, I'm going to grasp onto this for as long as I possibly can because I am not going to lose. And that's actually what is happening. Back in 2019 or 2020, I think it may have been the beginning of 2020. I can't actually remember right now. Maybe it was 2019. I did a twin flame video and I'm going to try to find it, but I talked about the Great Divide, and it was a channeled message from the angels that spoke about this Great Divide. Now, I personally thought that it had to do with the twin flame collective, where some twin flames would continue on the journey and move into union and some would just abandon the journey. And in fact, in that video, I did describe it as that. Somebody else mentioned the Great Divide and I was like, what? And this was recently. I'm producing this video in 2025, so like 6 years later. And I was like, what? Well, what's actually happening now is that those that are completely spiritually awakened, operating under spiritual laws and not physical laws, they are rising up here in prominence to skip timelines, go into a different plane of existence, if you will, while still being here. And then those that are stuck in these lower feminine, lower masculine energies are stuck in a different plane. And I feel this very much. I feel like if you're operating from the higher spiritual laws, you're in a totally different plane, and everything that's going on underneath you, if you will, with those that are really stuck in those lower energies, it's not going to affect you at all. It just won't. It won't affect you. It won't affect your family. It won't affect those who are operating under spiritual laws, who are vibrating with you. It's not going to affect them, because here's the real truth. I mentioned that Pluto is in Aquarius for the next 30 years or so, and that's a long time. For some of us, that's going to be the rest of our lives, maybe, right? For some of us, it's going to be a large portion of our lives. And for some of us, we may not even see the patriarchy completely crumble in this lifetime. We might not be able to see that. So this is not something that's going to change and transform overnight. This is going to take some time, and things will get worse before they get better. Meaning, again, the patriarchy is not going to go easily. But if you operate in your higher spiritual laws, if you operate from the highest possible feminine you can operate from if you're a divine feminine, or the highest possible masculine energy you could operate from if you're a divine masculine. And when I say divine, I'm talking about You're operating up here from the highest spiritual truths. You're operating from unconditional love, universal consciousness. You're not getting into the nitty-gritty of the garbage that's going on in the world today, but you're just operating from the knowingness that there is a shift going on toward the higher energies, and it's going to take some time before that energy shifts completely. But the reason we know that the higher energies are so great right now is because the lower masculine is grasping so hard. See, when you don't feel like you're losing anything, you don't have to grasp at anything, ever. 40 years ago, the patriarchy really didn't try to do much, right? I was born in 1970, and at that time, the patriarchy had a pretty strong hold in the United States. I don't know if you knew this, but women could not even get a loan by themselves or a credit card in this country until 1974. So I was well alive before women even had the right to borrow money in their name. In the 1970s, 1960s, 1950s, the patriarchy didn't have to work very hard to maintain their power. They just had it. Now, it's a different story. There are so many people that want to vibrate at a higher frequency and are moving toward that the patriarchy, the lower masculine, understands that they are losing everything. And they're going to fight to the death in order to maintain it. But in the end, it's still not going to work. So having this knowing that, okay, I'm just going to let them fight it out, like it has nothing to do with me, even though it seems like it. Even though if I read the newspapers, I don't know, do people read newspapers anymore? If I watch the news, if I watch news on YouTube, for example, like it doesn't seem like it. It seems like things are terrible and bad and there's awful people in the world. That is just the patriarchy not wanting to lose the stronghold that they have on societies. But natural principles says that they must lose. That's it. It's nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my opinion. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just the natural law of things. The balance of the universe operates in yin yang, and not even the ethereal universe. We're talking about the physical universe. It operates in the yin and yang of things. That's just the world we were born into, is the dichotomy of things. And so when one is too strong, the other takes over. That's just how it goes. So I hope this was helpful in appeasing you to understand, like, the patriarchy not going easily is what is expected to happen. It's just what is expected, and it has nothing to do with you as long as you are operating in the higher feminine or the higher masculine, and you stay there. And it might mean that you have to ignore what is going on and, turning a blind eye, because it is impossible to stay in your higher vibrational frequencies if you are getting angry, upset, if you are pitying people, if you are pitying yourself, if you are feeling victimized. You cannot possibly stay in those higher vibrational frequencies. It's just not possible. Your only job now as a higher feminine, as a higher masculine, is to stay in the higher vibrational frequencies. That's really the only way you can maintain that energy so that more people then attain that higher energy. And we reach critical mass as many people take a quantum leap into the higher energies. So I want to thank you so much for joining me here today. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Thank you for sharing this video with others who could use a little spiritual wisdom. Thank you so much for your support of my YouTube channel. You can purchase one of my 12 published books. You could join my meditation class. Meditation is a great way to maintain those higher vibrational frequencies. And I'll see you in the next video.